Hey guys, Parfax here, and we have another devlog. Did we get anything exciting? Well, let's find out. All right, so how we're gonna do this one is we're here on YouTube, and I'm just gonna play the clips. We've already watched this. We watched this at super speed, so when you see this go out, it may be pretty quickly after you would have been able to watch this, but we watched it on like times 1.5. So we got through it. We do have some pieces of information, and the first thing we're gonna have here for you is on solo and duo in queue for 3v3.
And a big one, you mentioned arenas. Like, we're now going to be introducing separate queues for solo people and groups in arenas. So I think that's going to, one, help the balance, and two, just give another option to solo players.
I also think, like, Group Finder, we have some kinks to work out there, and over the next few months, I think we're going to make it more accessible and easier for players to get in and find it. And it's
so you can see there, we're getting solo queues in 3v3 arenas. This is actually pretty huge. I know when I've been doing 3v3 arenas, I basically refuse to do them now without having a group because it gets absolutely horrible. Now, my only fear here is on some servers that I've been on, people aren't queuing for 3v3 arenas as much because, let's be honest, they're not incredibly rewarding. They keep upping the rewards of them, but they probably should up them even more. And if people aren't queuing, splitting that queue can be pretty bad. Now, will people queue more if you can go in solo? That is a very good chance. When we get fresh start servers, this is going to be something that people are going to be doing probably pretty decently often, especially at lower levels. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I think this is a great thing for the game. And yeah, we will see. It's something that is good, but let's hope the player base responds and starts playing more 3v3 arenas. So the next thing we're going to talk about, and it's not something that's actually in the game or coming super, soon, but they do talk a little bit about increasing the level cap. Some people thought that they were never going to increase the level cap. I thought that would be, well, not a great thing. I think especially with them increasing how fast we level, it'd be a fine thing to increase the level so you can kind of shake everything up. And they talk a little bit about increasing the level cap right here.
we want to keep adding horizontal gameplay. You might notice that, we were asked a lot, are you going to raise the level cap for Brimstone? And we just didn't think it was time to yet. We think as we get more content and more things for players to do, we feel like there's enough there, but we did want to grow sideways a little bit. So our first foray into this is the Heart Gem.
So you can see there, he says essentially that we are going to get a level increase, but they decided not to do it right here. Now, I would have preferred maybe a little bit of a different style than Heart Rune gems. I like them. I'm glad they put them in the game, but I wish they'd have done that and maybe a gear score increase. I know that's, very taboo and people don't like that, but you can do it in ways to catch everybody up. And the only people that really won't like it are the companies that have like your best gear, but gear now is a lot easier to obtain, especially with scarabs, and it would have been nice to kind of even the playing field by upping the gear score level. But honestly, I'll be fine when they increase the level cap. He pretty much says they are going to eventually, so we will see when that happens, but it probably won't be until the next big expansion. Probably, I imagine sometime next year, probably around June-ish or maybe the end of the year. Depends on how they go with their expansion-esque type of updates. So the next here is they're going to start talking a little bit about endgame. Now, the next two segments are a little odd because they kind of contradict each other, but listen to what he says here and then we will talk about it.
Wow. Anyway, let's move on. I think the first one is we're going to start leaning more into solo. Yeah. But by the way, that doesn't mean we're going to ignore PvP or PvE or anything else. Or group play. We're going to lean into solo as one thing we're just going to put more effort toward.
Yeah, I think especially at endgame, there's not a lot of solo activities that you can do right now. And I think that's something we're starting to take a look at. And I think you're going to start to see glimpses of it in Brimstone already. There might be opportunities for more solo chests as you get into the PTR and explore there. And I think, finding ways to, create meaningful progression in gameplay for endgame players as solo is something we're going to start thinking more about.
Yeah, so I think what he's referring to here is the sarcophagus. These are actually a lot of fun. You can do those with 1 to probably about 4 or 5 people. You do have to hit the ghost, which doesn't have a ton of health on it. It does give some decent little rewards. I don't think it's real meaningful solo gameplay. It's not, it's just like a little chest. Do I think this is something bad? No, I do think that the game does do well if you have some form of like solo. You go into ESO. ESO has basically like solo dungeons that you can do that give you really good loot. But the one thing that I will, you know, push back a little bit on here is we are playing an MMO, massive multiplayer online. I don't like games that go too far into the solo aspect. Is there something you should be able to do? Yes, fine. Solo. I wouldn't even mind maybe being able to do a dungeon solo. Maybe make, you know, Genesis have the ability to solo it, but you get, you know, a fourth of the rewards. Maybe when you go through it all the way, you just get like one little cache instead of like all the little things. It'd be kind of cool to see, and it'll open up more builds. But yeah, I hope they don't go too far down the rabbit hole on this. But more things to do at endgame is honestly never a bad idea. Just please don't go too far away from the group play, because this is an MMO. All right, you remember how I said they kind of contradict themselves? This is the very next point. We're only like 30 seconds down the line in this video. They just kind of go over a little bit more of the solo stuff. But listen to what they say here right after they talk about going into more solo content.
Yeah. You know, we now feel like we've done a pretty good job at group content. And now we want to start working towards super hard endgame raid content. And it was really important that we made a few good expeditions before we start, you know, crawl before you walk, walk before you run, that kind of thing. It was really important that we felt like we were succeeding at making expeditions before we start looking at raids. And I think we have some evidence now that we're doing a pretty good job at expeditions, and we can start moving down toward that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of compelling content to be made for 10, 20 group of players to see. You may have seen a glimpse of something that's in the future in store for you. And we are looking to add a lot more content like that in the future.
Yeah, for me, I think it's going to be hella fun when it's done. But the other thing is, like, right now, a lot of the gearing in game is so oriented towards PvP, right? Like, best in slot is defined by resilient and all the PvP perks, right? And what we want to do is create some PvE content that is as hard and challenging as war, so that you really have to optimize your gear for the PvE experience. And I think when we release this feature, that is a goal, right? Like, to make sure that it really drives the end game progression.
Yeah, so this right here, here's what I think about raids. We pretty much knew they were coming. This is something that we've been talking about forever, and we kind of knew that they were going towards this. It was kind of like the next step after mutations, right? And I think raids are great. I think part of the problem right now with implementing a raid the way the game is currently set up is it would only be for fun. I imagine the gear in there, it would have to literally be BIS gear for that dungeon for people even to run it. And BIS gear for PvE is going to have weapon perks on it. Now, which weapon perks depends on your build, and it'd be hard to put that many pieces of gear in there. But having 10 to 20 man raids would be a ton of fun, and it will be great for endgame progression, something that you can do endgame. I imagine it's going to have like a weekly cooldown, probably of like 3 or 5, something along those lines. But in order for it to be rewarding, it's got to have something really to pop in there. Gearing in this game is pretty easy to obtain now, especially with scarabs. So just having some expedition-esque type of loot isn't going to cut it. So AGS, if you're hearing me on these raids, they have to be really worth it. They have to give you like a ton of umbral shards. They have to give you like absolutely BIS gear and some crazy stuff. But please, 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 make it BIS gear for PvE and make it a PvE thing. Do not make us. Now, I'm going to go and I will be doing the raids. That is something that I will be doing, you know, so you don't have to worry about me doing them, because I will. Don't make PvP players have to do your raids. That is one of my big it just irritates the heck out of me when you make players especially do like end game content for specifically PvP to make you go do this huge PvE stuff. It is very annoying, and the only way you would have to do that is there to be like some special type of item that you'll probably need, like an augmentation to your gear, stuff like that. But please don't make us do the raids over and over again just to get our PvP stuff. Raids are a great thing for New World. We knew they were kind of going in this direction, so let's hope that when they do these raids, they do them correctly. And man, having 10 to 20 people in there is going to be a ton of fun, but it's going to be something that I imagine is not going to be for everybody, but we'll see when they come out. All right, the next point we're going to make actually is it continues right on. The one thing that I do want to say is on this, he actually mentioned something a little bit odd. Let's go back and re-listen to it.
Content that is as hard and challenging as war, so that you really have to optimize your gear for the PvE experience. And I think when we release
right
this
feature,
goal, right? Like to make sure that it really drives.
So when he says feature, it almost makes me think it's going to be like a mutation. They're going to do the same thing that they did with the mutations, but they're going to make like a raid version of it. I hope they don't go this route. The expeditions themselves are a little too small. I hope when they do it, they bring out a new expedition-esque type of thing, but it's a raid. About the only one that could possibly be it is Tempest, but for the love of God, please don't make me run through Tempest in a raid. I don't want to have to run 25 minutes just to get to the end of the raid, please. Like, I don't mind long raids. We used to raid all the time in ESO and stuff like that, but he does mention that it is going to be a feature and not like a new its own instance. This could be me just reading into it, but he really stops on that word and has to think about how he wants to phrase it. So we will see. The Ennead expedition is probably big enough. They could probably do it in there, but let's see. I hope they just don't kind of take the easy way out and just go on the expedition route where they just do, you know, a Genesis raid and stuff like that. But listen to what they say next. It's something we knew was coming, but they kind of confirm it right here.
The end game progression.
I hope whenever we release that feature, you have some method that helps you manage those gear changes that we're talking about. Because I think that would be important.
Yes, one of the big things that we're looking to do is aim for easier ways to swap in between different gear sets. Obviously, those of you who do high-level mutations, you're probably rocking different gear sets for different mutations to reduce the damage that you're taking from the monsters in those. Inventory management starts to become a lot when you are carrying all these different sets, and we're looking to add a feature that will help out with that significantly.
As a crafter, I would like that also, right? Like I don't have to swap in
Certainly
stone
true.
cutting, refining, all that.
But just full transparency, those aren't like in the near-term roadmap. These are things we're working toward.
That's why we're not calling them out by any kind of name.
Yeah. Speaking of things we're working toward.
All right, so you can see here we are getting what we are calling loadouts. We knew that they were working on this. It's basically been spoiled a handful of times, and we're going to get something right after this. They go through a lot of little things here. But yes, we're getting loadouts. Unfortunately, I thought they were a little farther, ahead of it. But yeah, it's said so it's not in the near future. So unfortunately, it's probably not going to come by the end of the year, which makes me a little sad. I thought for sure they'd be a little farther ahead of it. I thought there might have been a chance that it was coming in this set of updates. I thought maybe like the last PTR patch we'd see it, but that was just me being super optimistic. But of course, loadouts are great. The couple ways you could do it, you could just have it like a storage thing, sort of like Albion, where it has like different tiers of storage and you can just kind of put stuff in there. I don't think that's the route they'll go. I would personally like to see like mannequins to where I can just go up and you can visually see my set of gear sitting there. I can walk up and hit it, and that'd be pretty cool. I can also see a kind of like ESO add-on way where it has basically just like if the computer codes it to where I want this piece of gear, this piece of gear, this piece of gear, this piece of gear. And if they did it that way, it would allow you to like utilize multiple different pieces of gear for the same one. So like, let's say you want to run Champion's Amulet with 2 of your builds. You wouldn't have to get 2 Champion's Amulet if you go like the mannequin route, right? You'd have to get a Champion's Amulet for each one, but it'd be really nice to just have a way to have like a little closet. You walk up and you have like gear set 1, gear set 2, gear set 3, gear set 4, and you can name them whatever you want. You just click it, put all of your gear in there, and then just boop, puts it on you and you're good. But please, if we do the system, don't limit it to 500. Please don't limit us to 500. or give us the ability to put it in multiple places. But then please just let me go to one place to get all of my gear. I don't want to have to go to town to town to town. It's one of the worst parts of New World is the micromanaging of stuff that you shouldn't have to micromanage. Like if you want to swap out your trophies, you have to go to each individual house. It's really just a pain in the butt, and it doesn't provide like any sense of, like ownership of the item, or doesn't really, in my opinion, provide any type of positivity. But yeah, hopefully we either get mannequins, which I think is probably the second best, or just a closet that we basically can like click on a button and it loads all of our gear onto it.
On our last start.
Things that are in the design phase.
Yes, things that are really early, like concepting.
Yeah.
But we do get some feedback that players would like more ways to move quickly through the world.
Yeah.
More fast
And
travel points?
More.
I don't think they want
you know,
fast travel.
Shrines are great, but as our world is growing, and I mean, people have seen Brimstone Sands, it's massive, and the world is going to continue to grow. We are designing mounts.
Again, no timeline on these. Very far into the future,
Yeah.
but it is something we are beginning to actively work on. Part of that is because we know as the world gets, like right now, the world is really big. I think if it gets any bigger, it's going to require it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's super important. So you can kind of think about timelines along those lines.
But don't think about timelines,
Yes.
like at all.
Yeah.
Don't think about that. Just know that we heard you. We know that this is important, and we are working on it, but it is very, very close to just the inception point.
Yeah.
So.
All right, so you can see there they confirmed mounts. Again, this is something we knew was coming. We just had to kind of wait for them to officially confirm it. The interesting part there is he says you can kind of think of the timeline in the way of, once the zone gets bigger. To me, this means this is going to be something they put in the next expansion. So I don't know if they plan on doing their expansion every 6 months, or if they plan on doing the expansion basically like once a year. So maybe this time next year, we should be getting mounts. Now, of course, everything is subject to change, but there is a chance that we get mounts next year. They did say that they are just basically, starting to do them. They have said in the past that they kind of don't want them just be like, boom, here's mounts. They want them to be, serve a purpose in the world, which I think is good. Honestly, mounts in the game doesn't bother me either way. I don't mind mounts, but I don't think there's terribly that much running. Brimstone does get a little bit bad, and that's not actually because how big the zone is, because there's enough fast travel points to kind of counter that. The problem is, how the zones are laid out. There's some specific areas that you have to, the way you traverse the world is you have to take such a long way around. So if the world was a little bit more, like you could kind of go over everything, you'd be fine, but there's some specific spots in the world that you really have to go a long way around, and then it gets to be kind of, long. But I played BDO to where you literally had to run everywhere. Even when you had a fast mount, it would sometimes take you a decent amount of time if you want to run basically from like one spot to the other. So I don't think mounts are incredibly, like Parfax, they had mounts. I was like, yeah, but you couldn't actually fast travel in that game. So yeah, I don't think they're incredibly that important, but people love mounts, and honestly, it's a way for them to sell, more skins. Mount skins will be super popular. People love their mounts. I hope they don't go too like, gaudy with them. I hope they're not too extravagant. I would like to see, horses, camels, bears. I like bears, maybe like wolves, stuff like that. Stuff that's already in the game, but I don't want to see like, flying big winged dragons or pink little cars or anything like that. I don't think they'll go that route for New World, but hopefully it's just animals that we've seen in the game already. So I told you guys originally that they were going to talk about fresh start servers in this one, and I was right and I was wrong. So we have to go all the way to the end. So right here, this is basically the end of the video. They do have they talk about the revamped starting experience. They talk about the greatsword here. They talk about Brimstone. They talk about heart gems more. And then they talk about the new expedition. But in the final thoughts, we have something about fresh start servers. All right, so here is where they start talking a little bit about fresh start servers, and I will give you my thoughts here right off the bat.
Learned, got better with your feedback. You're going to see a lot more of that in the game going forward.
It's right here.
I wanted to let you know we hear the feedback on Fresh Start servers. We're going to have something to talk about real soon. Beyond that, we're going to see you in October where we talk about the roadmap. Bye-bye.
All right, so they didn't really give us any information about Fresh Start servers. They said it's coming real soon. So I imagine this is not going to be in the form of video. It's going to be in the form of a post on the forums. I will be scouring them, and I do every day, for the new post on the forums. It's coming, trust me, and I think it's going to be this week. I know it's Wednesday, but I believe Fresh Start's coming very soon. So they're going to have to get that information out there. So whenever we see it on the forums, I will get it out there. But if you guys weren't convinced that Fresh Starts were coming, if you didn't think they were confirmed, this confirms it. He said they're going to talk about the Fresh Start servers, and they're coming. I think they're coming soon. So everybody just wait. They're coming. But hope you guys are excited. They've got solo duo queues. We have eventually an increase to level cap. They are, leaning more towards solo gameplay, and then instantly talk about 10 to 20 man raids, loadouts, mounts, and a little bit about Fresh Start servers. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, like always, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.